Sonia Ange, let's have the details. The jingle. As announced in the headlines, Gabonese head of state Ali Bongo Ondimba received in audience his Central African counterpart Faustin Archange Touadera this 13th October, a meeting that allowed the two men to discuss cooperation issues and the withdrawal of the Gabonese armed forces contingent from the Central African Republic. We listen to Maria Batista.
Gabon has worked tirelessly for 25 years to restore peace to the Central African Republic. Proof that Gabon and the Central African Republic maintain more than fraternal relations despite the recent withdrawal by the United Nations of the Gabonese contingent of peacekeepers following allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse.
Gabon and Central Africa have a good relationship, and this is an opportunity to renew all of our cooperation and see how we can continue and strengthen our relationship. Gabonese contingents have been working for 25 years, helping Central Africa to find peace and security.
For the President of the Central African Republic, the United Nations should have shared this information with the two countries. According to Faustin Archange at Touadera, the UN has not communicated with the Central African countries.
We have listened to the United Nations communique for the sexual abuse and allegations. Today we have heard of the evidence to back it up. Investigations are in progress to know a little more on the subject.
President Touadera's visit to Libreville today, a symbol of sincere friendship between Gabon and the Central African Republic, therefore takes place in this context of incomprehension. The working visit due to the Central African #1 is therefore seen by some observers as that of the appeasement of the perceptible tension of the Libreville-Bangui line.
In the same line, the Central African president says he was not consulted on the UN's decision to withdraw the 450 Gabonese peacekeepers from the UN mission in his country. Since the departure of this contingent from Bangui for alleged rape allegations, the subject has not stopped making headlines. It emerged from the press conference of the Central African leader who was visiting Libreville today that no complaint had been filed by any victim with the Bangui authorities. Akenenge has the hints.
Several observers of the diplomatic life in Africa were already predicting a falling out between Libreville and Bangui. But this is not the case. During his visit to the Gabonese capital on Wednesday, Faustin Archange Touadera removed any ambiguity on the alleged involvement of Bangui in the withdrawal of the Gabonese peacekeepers from the Central African Republic. He said he was neither informed nor consulted about the decision, which he said was taken unilaterally by the United Nations. The departure of this contingent was deplored by the strong man of Bangui, who did not hide his regret about the return of instability in some areas left empty. On the subject of the cause of this withdrawal, President Touadera asserts that the Central African Republic authorities have not yet received any complaints from victims. These assertions are in line with the words of the spokesperson of the Gabonese presidency, who stated in a recent press conference that there were no victims in this case. The head of state of the Central African Republic has, however, specified that he will demand that the United Nations integrate his country into the investigations, before finishing by saying, quote, "When the truth comes out, there will be a correction and the Gabonese troops will be able to return." Full stop. This visit that therefore reassures public opinion on the good terms of cooperation between Gabon and the Central African Republic, noting that this relationship has been lasting for a very long time.
Still in Gabon, but this time let's talk economy. Gabonese entrepreneurs are preparing to take part in a high-level economic meetings. At least that's what the working session held yesterday in the premises of the Directorate General for Trade suggests. It was in the presence of our reporters. Let's listen to Maria Mbina.
At the center of the discussion, strategies to allow Gabonese companies to have more international visibility. or with a partner as reliable as determined the Francophonie.
Francophonie Économique is organizing a business forum, so it is for us in partnership with the ANPI, the Chamber of Commerce, the Specialized Zone of Nkok, to motivate Gabonese companies to participate in this second major economic and Central Africa commercial.
For these high-level meetings, specific sectors bear witness to the good policy of Gabon in terms of supporting entrepreneurship.
There is a sector that is very, very dynamic in Gabon in terms of the development of the entrepreneurship that there is today in several sectors in the agro-industry, in renewable energies. There is also a whole public structure with the Ministry of Trade and Investment structures for export promotion, which are there to support entrepreneurs.
Economic growth is a major issue in this time of crisis for all countries. The different regions of the globe are constantly putting in place tools and mechanisms in order to involve all sectors in the post-COVID-19 recoveries, a dynamic that seems to be adopted by the countries of the sub-region and their partners.
Furthermore, the COVID-19 pandemic has both exposed and made critical infrastructure deficits in the developing countries worse. After analysis of the last Infra Week in Paris, we have an idea on how efforts can be made to reduce this deficit. Let's watch. At the Paris Infra Week, African leaders, investors, lenders, multilaterals, and other players of the infrastructure finance community from around the world made a case for investment in the continent's economic and social infrastructure. This fifth edition of the Paris Infra Week 2021, in a post-pandemic context, addressed the role of infrastructure strategy in the global economic recovery and the roadmap for a new generation of quality infrastructure projects aligned with sustainable development goals. Moreover, infrastructure systems based on digital and technological solutions must be climate-friendly, resilient, socially inclusive, fiscally transparent, and sustainable, all in line with the G20 principles for quality infrastructure investment. This year, the Paris Summit for the Financing of African Economies, initiated by France, marked a step forward in that direction. Furthermore, other sectors like communications, telecommunications, energy, water, health, and education remain very high priority areas for developing countries. But there's also climate change, with severe weather events expected to become more frequent in the coming years. Countries face a race against time to invest in resilient and bankable infrastructure. We talk about health this time in brief and images. 168,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine are the exact number of vaccines received this Monday at the Léon-Mba International Airport in Libreville by the Gabonese authorities. The American Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which requires only one injection, is added to the 100,000 doses of the Chinese Sinopharm vaccine and 10,000 doses of the Russian vaccine Sputnik V already in use in the country. Let's talk about sports. Now, we learned that FIFA has just decided to remove the sanction imposed on the Chadian football team in March 2021, a decision coming at the time where Les Saos are disqualified from the AFCON, from both the AFCON 2021 and the World Cup in Qatar 2022. Insights with our sportsman, Akenenge.
The readmission of Chad to global football follows the restoration of the country's football federation by the government that finally revoked its decision to create a national football management committee, noting that Chad had been disqualified from the African Cup of Nations qualifiers after the unexplained dissolution of the Federation of Football by the Central African country's sports minister. Internally, a note signed by the Secretary General of the Presidency of the Republic on 21st of June instructed the Minister of Finance and Budget to release 400 million CFA francs via the National Office of Youth and Sport to the National Committee for the Provisional Management of Football. This sum was intended at elaborating on a draft statute, but according to the committee's official, nothing was cashed in. Struggles were being felt on and off the pitch, as Chad's national team was last in the Group A standings for the African Cup of Nations qualifiers to be held in January 2022 in Cameroon. And in line with the sorting out this problem, Chad's sports minister said FIFA's suspension was lifted following various discussions between the Chadian authorities, the government body of the Confederation of African Football, FIFA, and the CAF, say that they will conduct a joint mission to N'Djamena to follow the ongoing discussions between government and the National Football Federation. In the meantime, Chad do not have any upcoming international match planned after being knocked out of the 2022 World Cup qualifiers by Sudan in 2019.
Thanks, close this news edition, but first, an update of the headlines is compulsory. Gabonese head of state Ali Bongo Ondimba today, 13th October, received in the audience his Central African counterpart Faustin Archange Touadera, a meeting that allowed the two men to discuss cooperation issues and the withdrawal of the Gabonese Armed Forces contingent from the Central African Republic. On another note, the COVID-19 pandemic has both exposed and made worse the critical infrastructure deficit in developing countries. After analysis of the last Infra Week in Paris, we have an idea on how efforts can be made to reduce this deficit. I'll be back at 10:30 p.m. with more news. Thanks for staying tuned to G24 and its social media. The next edition of the news is in French at 8 p.m. local time with Gaël Mapesi. It is October Pink. Get screened, ladies, for your own safety. Goodbye.